I'm Brian Briscoe, host of the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. And this podcast is different than everything else out there. I bring together a new and an experienced investor on each episode, and I let the aspiring investor ask the questions that they need answered. So if you're an aspiring investor yourself, you probably will have the exact same questions. Now, before we get to this episode, make sure you hit the subscribe button below and that little bell to make sure you get notified every time we post a new episode. And now, enjoy the show. Well, that said, Will, we got Nic on the line. What do you want to ask him?
Is there anything that your team does to be able to change culture and be able to demonstrate, ownership that actually cares?
Sure. And we always come in with a pretty strong CapEx budget and then come in and fix those things. And especially in your first 4 to 6 weeks, have staff that's ready. If there's a list of work orders or service requests, knock those out. Even if it means for the first 2 months, you have an extra maintenance guy there to kind of keep all those to set that personality of the property from the beginning. And then once you get those under control and get a lot of your CapEx, you can downsize. If you have a clean property and you come in and you paint, maybe add some amenities. But if somebody's toilet's stopping up regularly and it's taking a day or two to get there, or those people, one, are not going to refer anybody, and two, probably aren't going to renew, especially renew at your new higher rent.
Welcome to the Diary of an Apartment Investor podcast. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. Very excited for today's show. It's another one of our Ask the Expert episodes. We have two amazing people on the line. We have Nic Espanet and Will Edwards. So Nic, you're up to bat first today. So do us a favor, tell us a little, actually first, welcome to the show. And now do us a little favor and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. First of all, Brian, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to get on with Will and share a little bit about my story. So just about me, I've been doing multifamily real estate for close to 6 years now. I come from a healthcare background, so really had no real estate experience prior to starting my journey. I was a physical therapist, what I went to school for, did that for about 20 years. Started down the path of just looking for something different to do with my retirement, and thought I was going to get into single family. But as I was doing my due diligence and researching, kept coming across multifamily, and that you learn that it was something that it's not just big corporations or family offices that are buying the multifamily, that that individuals were doing it. So my first investment asset, I passively invested in a couple of deals, but my first syndication was 100 units.
That's a good size investment to get in for your first one. So how did you go from 0 to 100?
I used a mentor, and you went through a mentorship program that's local here to DFW. And, I think it can be done without a mentor, but having somebody that's gone through it and being with a group that kind of holds your hand, teaches you. And then, part of that too is that, on that first deal, I had 2 other partners, one other fellow like myself that did not have the experience. And then one guy that had done, I think at the time he had 5 syndications. So he came in, he took a pretty good chunk of the deal, but he was part of the same mentorship program, but he did not take any to asset management. Probably for the first year he was on the phone with us, or we were on the phone with him weekly to every 2 weeks or so. He was there if we had any questions. So, can you do it by yourself? Sure. But I think you're a lot more likely to make mistakes, and you're going to have to start smaller.
Yeah, absolutely. And I 100% agree with you. I also did a coaching program, mentorship. Our first deal wasn't quite as big, but if you don't have a mentor, if you don't have somebody there, holding your hand, so to speak, I think the other way or the best way to get in is just like you said, you start smaller. Start on something that you can cut your teeth on and graduate up into the 100 units. Because that's a lot of property. It's a lot of units. That's a lot of potential problems. And a lot of money that's on the line. So
definitely. And once you get above about 60 units, it's kind of runs the same, because that's about where you scale up large enough to have third-party management full time there. So that's kind of one of the things that the program that I'm involved with teaches is look for that around 60 units and bigger, just because you can have pay. It's cost effective to pay for third-party management.
Oh yeah, Oh yeah. And you get a lot better management when there's somebody there on site, during regular business hours. And yeah, that's depending on the market, 60 to 80 somewhere. We've got a couple of 80 units that don't quite, pay to support on-site management. But we're in, South Carolina, which is probably a little different dynamic than where you're at.
Sure.
So yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. So you talked about this being part of your retirement. What was it that made you want to go from physical therapist to real estate investor?
I think maybe same book that a lot of people had, the Rich Dad Poor Dad book. I just started viewing money different than how I was raised to see money that you work for money instead. Instead, I started, change my mindset of wanting to have money work for me. And so just, my wife's husband, my wife's dad has been a serial entrepreneur his whole life, and just seeing what he had done. He had some small apartment complexes, 12 units, a lot of single family, and just learning from him and her kind of spark that fire. And then my original intent was just to join this investment group and just passively invest, just move my stuff out of the stock market to something that I understood, I felt like was a better investment. But after doing it for a few months, I was like, man, I can do this myself. Yeah. And so that's when I transitioned into more of pursuing being a syndicator instead of just being a passive investor.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so within about a year, just over a year, was able to get my first deal.
Awesome. Yeah. Rich Dad, Poor Dad is one of those books that for me especially was, a mind blowing and mind changing event. I'm actually re-listening to Cash Flow Quadrant. I think it's the second book in the series. I don't know if there's another one in between them, but he talks, Robert Kiyosaki talks about how, he and his wife, after the crash in 2008, bought $100 million worth of multifamily, right in that time frame. So, they were very much involved in the multifamily game. And, it's really what got me into real estate too, is just looking at what they did, looking at money differently, and going from there. And it sounds like, you talked about your wife's father having the, your real estate background. It sounds to me like you may have had like the kind of the Rich Dad, Poor Dad thing, yourself with, father-in-law and your real dad.
Yeah. I've never thought about that, but that is a good analogy where he just has that mind. He's more the millionaire next door, where he's worth a significant amount, but lives very minimally. I don't want to quite, and he still has his, I think it's a 12 unit property. It's been paid for since the 80s, but he's in his late 70s, still does the grass, fixes everything. When it iced over, not this last one in DFW, a couple back, as it started melting, there was water coming through the roof. So he was on the roof trying to patch it with ice and snow up there. He's in his late 70s. And my wife's like, what are you think? Ended up missing part of there was a family member's wedding that day, and he's patching a roof instead of paying somebody to do it. But that's just his, growing up in the Depression era where, there's why pay somebody when you can do it yourself.
Yeah. And that I think that is very much a generational concept. Sure. It's something that, that's about the age my dad is. And, up until recently, he was up on the roof every time. Like he's got the air conditioner on top of the house, and every time something would break, he'd be up there trying to fix it too. I think my mom finally convinced him not to do that anymore. So,
cut all the ladders in half.
Exactly. Well, cool. So let's, going to ask about one of the deals, but before we do that, let's talk about your motivation, your big burning why. You talked a little bit about some of the reasons for getting into multifamily, but what's that deeper motivation that you have?
Sure. It's a lot of, I have three daughters. So, being able to have time with them, being able to travel, give them experiences. I don't want to give them things, I don't think a child should, I'm not a new car and things like that as our wealth increases, but being able to take them to different parts of the country and then different parts of the world and not have to worry about it. And the great thing about multifamily or any kind of real estate, but I think multifamily even more so, is you can take off for, 2 to 4 weeks. I have a colleague, he has one daughter, and they spent the last year living out of a van, traveling all over the US. And he stops, has Wi-Fi connection, and they'll boondock, maybe once every couple of weeks or so, they'll stay in a hotel, but they've seen most of the country. They came home over Christmas and they're back out again, exploring another part of the country. So, you know, and he's still very involved and and very successful with real estate.
Yeah. Yeah. It definitely gives you that freedom of movement, time freedom, even location freedom, which a lot of people are looking for. And it resonates with me. I once had 3 daughters. I now have 4. So I got a son too, but, you know, very, very much appreciate that. So, that's it. Let's talk about one of your deals. Pick your favorite, your most recent, or just one you want to tell us about.
I'll start with the first. It was we're coming up. Well, just past 4 years that we've had it. It's my ugliest property, but it does great. It's, you know, it wouldn't, if you're first looking at it, you might think it's not. You may pass on it. It's 100 units with 94 1-bedrooms and only 6 2-bedrooms, all single story. But it's we decided to market it more towards seniors. It's not an official senior living, but it's there's not a swimming pool, there's not a fitness center, but being all one level, it fits better to that demographic. Yeah. And so it's in Abilene, Texas, which it's about 2 hours west of DFW. But we really try to market to retired veterans and seniors. Yeah. And, you know, they're just nice. You know, what's great is they're steady. They're not moving. They don't cause problems. Most of them aren't tearing, you know, we don't have to worry about parties or loud, you know, things like that going on. So it's been just nice and steady. And, you know, we've had a nice steady cash flow out of that property. We're looking right now, we're weighing 2 options to either list it, or we've got a pretty nice supplemental quote on it where we could, between what we've already distributed to our investors and what this is, it'd be close to probably 85-90% of their initial investment they'll have back, and it'll still be cash flow. You know, our debt payment's going to go up some, so cash flow would dip a bit, but you know, at that point, a $100,000 investor may have 10 or 15 into the deal and everything else back in their pocket. So, you know, that one's been great. And then, you know, I'll hop forward. We had an interesting closing at the end of the year. We closed on December 31st. You know, and a lot of people, you know, just kind of sweating there. Yeah. And due to people wanting their bonus depreciation. Exactly. But a lot of that was just because of the labor shortage. We went to wire. My partner went to wire on the 30th. He left his house at 9:45, did not get a wire out till 4:45 that afternoon. Oh, 7 bank branches, one of the big local bank, or not local, I mean, they're national banks, but they needed 2 people to sign off on the large loan, on the large wire. And he in the past has always been able to get it taken care of. It is local, but by the time it's done, his wife got out going to banks also. They've been to 7 branches before they finally found one that could handle it. It was, you know, we were sweating. So we had a soft close on the 30th, and the buyer was okay with us. Actually, you know, the title had the money, but we had to title wired it on the 31st. So we were just by the latest you can, it was the 31st on a Friday, you know, last day of the month, last day of the week, last day of the year. So that's one of my partners has a property management company. So having that vertical integration, we were able to get access to the property on the 30th, even though we technically didn't own it, just because our fear was it was going to sit empty then, you know, over the holiday weekend.
Long weekend.
Without us. So we were able to get in there on Thursday night and kind of just, you know, kind of secure everything and start onboarding. But yeah, it was kind of sweating, especially not being involved, because he was in Houston trying to get all that taken care of. I'm trying not to bug him, but I'm waiting for updates. And so that was great. And that was a 262 unit in North Houston.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was my 7th deal. So from the first one, the second one I've done, that was number 7. I have a total of 1,150 total units that I've syndicated. Yeah.
And for those who are listening, who don't understand why closing on the 31st is a big deal, you get this thing called bonus depreciation, you know. So if you do a cost segregation study, you can actually take a very large paper loss on all of these properties. And incidentally, so it ends up being a lot more tax friendly. Let me finish that thought before I go to something else. Incidentally, we closed on something on the 27th. You know, we have our cost study done and the report back, and it looks like we're going to give out pretty close to 100% depreciation for the investors. So In the case of the property we closed on the 27th, we owned it for 4 days during the year, but the impact of the tax bill is if you put $50,000 in, you're going to get a negative $50,000 on a K1 tax statement, in about a month.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's like my wife and I've paid little to no income tax since 2018.
Yeah.
Through this. So it's one of like us, we own that property 24 hours, less than 24 hours. And we get to do the bonus depreciation for all of 2021.
For full,
and we were lower leverage because we're doing an assumption, but we're about 80%. A 50K investment would get 40 something back in depreciation. Still not bad.
Still really, really good numbers. I mean, we had a couple of properties where our depreciation was about 50%, but I mean, regardless, it ends up being super tax friendly, especially with the current laws. But
this is the last year it's full. I think 2023 it'll be 80%. It starts stepping down.
Yeah.
I don't see this administration.
Yeah, I don't see this administration doing it. Maybe the next one will bring it back and extend it. But yeah, it's been fabulous for the people who can use it. People who can't use it just carries forward until the years that they can. So, well, awesome. So thanks for taking us from that 100 unit to the most recent one. Appreciate the overview there. So that said, what's next for you?
I'm just joined with it. I've got two different groups that I partner with. We've got another deal in the DFW area that we've got an accepted LOI on and negotiating that. It'll be a little different. It's got some burned out units on it. So we're going to be, down a new, but we're bringing another partner in that has some experience with that. That's going to work, kind of focus on that while me and the other partners are working on the asset management side, keeping the units that are already up and running going. And then we're also looking, so I'm looking in Dallas and Houston. Also, one of my goals this year is to partner with somebody on something in Florida. Right now the rent growth in Florida is through the roof. It's probably the hottest, has many of the hottest submarkets in the country right now are in Florida.
I do live in one of the hottest submarkets, or it's a very tertiary. It's Idaho Falls. The problem with investing in Idaho Falls is there are 20 apartment complexes above 40 units in the entire city. And I know the owners on a handful of them, and they're not interested in selling. They're the buy and hold investors.
Yeah.
They're the 70-year-olds that still get up on the roof. But I think a lot of opportunity in Florida, a lot of opportunity in DFW.
Yes. No, there's serious. Well, and the thing is Idaho Falls in Idaho.
It is, yes.
Okay, so a lot of those areas, Utah, see your Utah shirt on. That they didn't have the building they had in the 70s, the building boom that DFW or maybe Florida. So you don't have that older product that's available in DFW, Houston, Atlanta, some of the Florida. The Carolinas. I think you mentioned earlier, the Carolinas are the same way. They didn't have a tremendous building boom. A lot of people love Alabama, and same deal. There is some, but they're just not near the 70s and 80s product.
That's a good point. Here, there was if you look at the existing inventory, there was a little bit of a boom in the 70s, but it's not because of the relative size. There wasn't a ton of new product, but if you look at the existing inventory, a lot of it is 70s build. And then even, Salt Lake City all the way up to here, it's about a 3-hour drive, but the Salt Lake City, Provo, Orem, Ogden, and even Idaho markets, the biggest boom has come in the last 10 years, so that it's either stuff that's 30 or 40 years old or stuff that was built in the last 10 years. And that's what we're seeing in this area anyway.
When you can see, if you look almost rings around DFW of the different boom and then cool off, boom and then cool off building, moving up to Plano's kind of the 80s cutoff, and then it started back up. Yeah. One of the things that shifted a lot, that's some worthless trivia here. Something in the mid 60s happened. Before 65, 9 of the largest cities were in the north. After 65, 9 of the largest cities are in the south. And air conditioning. Once people can start to tolerate the summers in the south. Now, New York's the only city in the top 10 that's in the north. And LA, I think, was the only one in the south at below whatever would be considered the south.
Yeah. That absolutely makes sense. My wife grew up in South Carolina, and man, it gets warm there. It gets really warm there. But and I'm sure Dallas gets pretty warm as well. I've only been there a couple of times. And speaking of the DFW area, let's introduce Will. So Will, my understanding is you're Plano. Where are you
Yes.
at? Plano.
Yep, I'm in Plano.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, that said, Will, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Great to have
Appreciate
you.
it.
Yeah. Awesome. So Will, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So my name is Will Edwards. I live, like you said, in Plano, work in Dallas in my W-2, have a background working in multifamily, the multifamily industry. Used to work for a large property manager here in Dallas. And was a turns manager for about 1,000 units here in Dallas. And then currently in my W-2, I oversee about a little over 300 offices for a home health and hospice agency based here in Dallas. So we have office space across the country, and I manage all of the facilities management for them. I do all of our tenant improvement, all of our construction management, those sorts of things. So you looking to use those skills and talents to be able to get in on a GP team and find people that are motivated for the same reasons. And
Yeah, and absolutely. And we've talked about this before, but that's a really good skill set to have coming into the multifamily industry. A lot of people, especially on podcasts, a lot of people focus on the getting the first deal, but where the rubber meets the road and where you really make your money is on the asset management side. And I think you're postured very well to, come in on a GP as the asset manager. So
yeah, that's the goal
for you. Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of, coming in on GPs, what's your reason? What's your big burning why for doing that?
Yeah, sure. So I've got 2 young kids, hoping to have more in the future, but 2 for the moment, and looking to provide a lifestyle that's going to allow me to spend time with them. But I think more importantly than that, I'm looking to make an impact in communities in a way that's going to be a little bit different than some operators. I'm not looking just for a paycheck. I'm looking to be able to impact the lives of residents in a way that's going to be beneficial to them, but also beneficial to our investors, and use profits from investment for kingdom purposes, and be able to live in a way that's going to, provide opportunities for other people that don't have the same resources that I do or will in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love it. And there's lots of ways, lots and lots of ways to give back. And something I like about the apartment investing is you make people's lives better by making their homes better, where they live better. And that's definitely something we can do here. So,
yeah.
Well, that said, Will, we got Nic on the line. What do you want to ask him?
Yeah, Nic, we come from kind of a similar background, you with a PT and home health background a little bit, me working on the operations side of home health. What kind of did you have any limiting beliefs coming into the space, coming from healthcare? Was there anything that, as a new general partner, somebody who hadn't had the experience, what were some things that you had to overcome coming into the space?
No, great question. I think my biggest limiting belief was that I wouldn't be able to raise the capital, and then, and that's where coming into a group of people, you're getting around other people that wanted to do the same thing, and educating my family and friends that may not know about the multifamily world, or even real estate, and how much better it is than even being in the stock market, or, just a small savings account, or any kind of savings account, getting a small interest on it. So, I think my biggest hurdle was that everything had to be perfect. You want to get as many things as you can, but you're never going to get everything. Early on, when I was starting down thinking the single family world, I had a huge analysis paralysis problem, where I wanted every line, everything had to be just, perfectly in line but at some point you got to get as many things lined up as you can, and then move forward. And that, that's where, when you're underwriting these deals, building in conservative points, they're going to pull your fat out of the fire every once in a while. It's just, and it may not be, if you're conservative somewhere, it may not be where the problem is, but if you have the problem over here, but you're conservative over here, but that area worked out, they're going to balance out, because you've got a lot of moving parts in a multifamily. You're buying a business, you're putting somebody that makes 55,000 in charge of a multi-million-dollar business. They're the face of your property. Something's going to go haywire, but you just got to be able to, when that happens, be calm and figure out how to solve it. But that's where, if you've got those conservative buffers built in, in different areas that you'll recover from them. You know, and we stress test our deals too. That's something we've always looked to see, like what level of vacancy can we get to and still return, you know, what's our break even point? What if the interest rate right now with floating rates, what if the interest rates go up 100 basis points in the next year? What's that going to do to the deal?
Sure.
And you want to be able to convey that to our potential investors, say, look, even if we jump 100 basis points and a year from now, you know, yes, our cash flow is going to come down some, but it's still a very viable deal.
Yeah. So so like the limiting belief would be, hey, you know, I desire for perfection in every deal, right? And you're saying like, hey, we need to make sure that we're building in stuff for whenever it's not perfect, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, and having good team, you know, being from a healthcare background, I never had a finance class or economics. You know, it makes sense to me, and I like numbers, but you know, bringing people on my team that have that experience, and I'm, you know, to the point now where we're looking to hire that stuff out to somebody that's their background and training.
Sure. Cool. Yeah. That's good. Well, on that same end, you know, being new investor, right? So oftentimes, you know, you can underwrite conservatively, but what's an item that you see that is most overlooked by new investors whenever they're doing due diligence? That could be something like asset-wise, physically on the property, or something that they just don't, or something that you didn't foresee whenever you did your first deal that is really set things, you know, giving you a new perspective and allowed you to grow from. What's the item that's most overlooked by those new investors?
I think probably newer, in the current, what's been going on in the last year or so is delinquency. You know, how much delinquency does a property have that shows how their tenants are paying, or do they have a lot of people that are owe more than a month's rent? You know, if you're looking at a demographic that's making $40,000-$50,000 a year, once they get 2 months behind on rent, it's, unless they get some type of charity, the odds that they're going to make that up, it's I mean, it's just a numbers game to be able to make that up. You know, and this is something that I've really started focusing on more. Look at the 1 mile median household income, divide it by 12, and then take 30% of that. That's what your average tenant can pay between their rent, their utilities, and any fees that you're charging. And if you're getting much above that, you're probably going to have a hard time keeping people current. Now, if your 1 bedrooms are probably going to be a little below that. And if you have 3 bedrooms, may need you just put your average are to be pretty close to you know, if the median household take the median household income, divide it by 12, and multiply by or divide by a third or 30%, and that's roughly what you should be charging, or you're going to be able to charge.
Yeah, one thing that has kind of been a problem for us on specific properties is plumbing. You know, so when we get in and do our due diligence, you know, it's hard, and that's probably one of the hardest things to do due diligence on. You can have a plumber come out and scope the main line, but there's not a whole lot other stuff. But we have had a lot of expenses on some of our older properties on the plumbing.
Fresh water leaks.
Yeah, water leaks, slab leaks, you know, dripping faucets, and where we operate in the Southeast, almost every property we have is, you know, master metered, you know, so it's you know, one water bill that comes to us, and then we do charge back. But plumbing for us has been, you know, one of the largest expenses, one of the largest unanticipated expenses. We've had a couple of main lines rupture as well. We're in areas with lots of trees, and so when you put a main line that's been in the ground for 50 years around a tree that you know, has been growing for 50 years, yeah, I mean. So that's kind of the one thing that I've seen on our own properties that, you know, we, you know, underestimated cost for. Yeah, didn't foresee.
Well, even if you're billing it back, that's, you know, if you could reduce that by 50%, then you could raise rent by that's, you say you're saving $50 on what you're billing out in water, you may be able to catch that on a rent side. And you know, that comes back to that. What can the demographic in that immediate area afford? And
exactly.
So there's an opportunity, but I'm waiting. We had we knew we had water leaks at one of our properties and searched for it. Well, we were replacing a sewer line, and they're digging, and we get a picture like, look at this. There was a sewer line going this way and a fresh water going perpendicular. There were 2 small leaks right by where the crack was in the sewer. So and it's saved us between $2,000 and $3,000 a month since we fixed that fresh water leak.
Mm-hmm.
But we would have never found it because it was going into the sewer line. A lot of times it'll bubble up, or you'll have a greener area in the grass, but we knew we had a leak. We just could not find it.
Yeah. Interesting. Cool. That's good. I appreciate that. And so a lot of these assets that we're purchasing, B, C class properties, if that's target, value add, oftentimes they're going to have a lot of deferred maintenance, and sometimes residents can kind of get numb to previous ownership and their lack of ability to resolve those maintenance issues, those lingering issues. Is there anything specifically that your team does to go in and change culture at that property to allow them to know that, like, hey, we're here, we're going to take care of the stuff, we have the capital to be able to do that? Is there anything that your team does to be able to change culture and be able to demonstrate, ownership that actually cares?
Sure. And we always come in with a pretty strong CapEx budget. So that's, early on, we want to come in and fix roofs if there's leaking or any major problems. You can catch a lot of that on your R&M of the existing T12.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the things I look for. Is there something they're paying above what industry standard would be, either on roofs or sewers, stopped up toilets, and then come in and fix those things. And especially in your first 4 to 6 weeks, have staff that's ready. If there's a list of work orders or service requests, knock those out. Even if it means for the first 2 months, you have an extra maintenance guy there to kind of keep all those to set that personality of the property from the beginning. And then once you get those under control and get a lot of your CapEx, you can downsize. It may be worth budgeting an extra maintenance guy the first 2 to 6, 8 months or so, just because it's even if you have a clean property and you come in and you paint, maybe add some amenities. But if somebody's toilet's stopping up regularly and it's taking a day or two to get there, or the stove is tripping a breaker and it takes a day or two, those people, one, are not going to refer anybody, and two, probably aren't going to renew, especially renew at your new higher rent that you might want to do. But if you can come in and really do it, and even doing tenant appreciation things, we don't get I would have thought we would have had better participation when we have a snow cone truck or a taco truck, or we try to do something quarterly or so. But there's still just a handful of people. We even did early in COVID, we bought every single unit of pizza. Now it was Mr. Jim. It wasn't the best high end. It was a $5 pizza that we bought for every unit. And one property, we only had 30% of the people go collect them. So it was interesting, surprising. One, we had about 90 something, but it was interesting to see how different properties partook. We basically gave them a coupon because at COVID, we didn't want to be handing them out. We wanted them to be able to go and pick their own pizza up. But we could track how many people cashed them in.
Yeah. I got a couple of thoughts on that one. I mean, number one, if you as a new owner come in and you start hitting those maintenance requests immediately, word gets out. All right. And that will change what tenants think about it. So, tenants talk, they're neighbors. They, a lot of them have friends in the other units, and they're going to be talking, so if they were frustrated with the previous property management or the previous ownership for not doing all those maintenance requests, you come in and you start doing those maintenance requests, the word is going to get out. And then while you're doing that, something I think that really helps is having an outside in approach to your CapEx. If you go in, and I know a lot of syndicators, a lot of operators who do that, if you go in and only thing you do is renovate the interiors, nobody's going to notice. All right. I mean, they may see construction crews and they may hear people talk about it, and, they hear through the grapevine that there's renovated units, but they're not going to see them. So if you have an outside in approach, and, Nic mentioned, painting and some other things you can do outside, adding amenities, make sure you're doing an outside in, because that's what makes the property more attractive for current tenants. And, if you're looking for, there's lots of reasons to do it. I mean, you're going to get a higher renewal rate, but you're going to have also, in addition to that, you're going to be able to raise rents on the people who don't have the renovated units if you're doing all of that stuff on the exterior, and they see that you're taking care of things, and they see that you're handling maintenance requests really, really quickly. And that changes the culture pretty quickly.
Well, and that helps too, because ideally, if the prior management was being lax on late fees, you want to set a culture of, we're going to follow through. There's consequences for not paying, because we're not, in the end, we're not a charity organization. We want to collect. It's, my wife and I have talked about it. If we want to give somebody grace, we need to do it out of our pocket, not out of the property's pocket, because we have, responsibility to our investors. But I think it's unfair to allow people to drag out for 2 weeks, 3 weeks and build that up, because then they get that mindset when, we can't go to a restaurant and eat and not pay, or fill our vehicle up with fuel and drive off. The rest of us, there are very few places that can you just delay your payment like that. And so, setting the expectation on the third notices come out, if by X date we're taking you to court, and we're not being mean. It's just, we still got to make our debt payment. If we're late, the bank's coming after us.
Yeah. And the bank does the same thing to us. Credit cards, that's how credit card companies run it. I mean, anybody who's collecting not quite anybody, but most people who are collecting payments, there's some sort of late fee if you're not paying within a reasonable amount of time. So enforcing it, you got to enforce it.
If you're doing the good things while you're doing that, it helps balance it out. But, setting that, because we've had to change the culture at a couple of different properties, and there's some people coming in thinking we're not fair, and it's that's why we hire a big mean property manager.
Well, and they say like trust is earned in drops and lost in buckets, right? So like it's going to take a while to earn that trust, but whenever you lose it, it's going to go quickly. So that's great. I appreciate that. I think I've got one more question for you. I really appreciated everything so far. It's been super helpful. But are there any, like, getting super practical here, are there any systems or like unique KPIs that you have in place on your asset management side that have led to your success? Anything that, like, you're tracking that some other operators maybe aren't, or things that you've brought in that are, this has been a super helpful metric to us, or this is a super helpful system that we've had a lot of growth and balance in?
I don't have an outside system, but one thing that I've always tracked and I could really see was delinquency. And watching anytime anybody owes more than a month's rent, I'm asking, what's going on with this person? Why, where are we at in the process? Well, during COVID, during the CDC eviction moratorium, we couldn't evict people. So I would see people that owed 4, 5, 6, even 8 months rent. And it was maddening that we couldn't do anything at that time. And it like Brian was saying, it's contagious. If they're hanging out, doing their laundry, say, well, why are you paying your rent? I haven't paid mine in 6 months and they haven't done anything. And so, that I'll pull up a delinquency report at least once a week, and then I'll look and see what often you have their current rent, and you can just do a little quick Excel formula and see, just do it and see if it's more than 1 month and see where that is, and see, and that property manager, there's a note column on that too. Have they made notes on it or updated it within the last few days to know where we are? Watching another one is availability, or your make ready report, looking at what units you can look in there and see if there is a unit that has been vacant for more than a month. I want to know what's going on, why we haven't moved that unit, or even longer. And so, those are a couple of the main things. And then on that availability report, how many there's it's like vacant lease ready, vacant lease not ready. And if they're not ready and it shows somebody moving in 3 to 5 days, I'm usually, when we have our weekly call, is this unit going to be ready on March 2nd? We're showing somebody, because I don't want to put that person off and go, oh, we need 2 more days, because guess what? They may go down the street to a property that has units. And I always want to have some ready to lease units, somebody to look and lease, because if somebody's ready and comes in, if we can get them qualified, I want them, if they want to move in that afternoon, let them, because if not, they're going to go down the street to the next place. We've just started, this is very new. It's called, I already forgot the name, Meet a Lease maybe, but we've got some automated calls. So we're not missing calls. We're getting those appointments set up. The same thing in this, I think in Society Day, if somebody's got a list of apartments, they got 30 minutes to call them. If they don't get somebody in our property, they're calling the next one on their list. And if that property gets them and gets them to connect and move in there, we've lost an opportunity. So we're really trying to make sure we don't miss any calls or emails.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. Time is definitely of the essence, and having a system, even if it's automated, to do that callback. That's something that we've seen several times, where if you don't have the right systems on that part, things are going to fall through the cracks, and your occupancy is going to take a little dip. But Well, that said, we are about out of time. Thank you very much to both of you for coming on the show today. I got one question for each of you, and Nic, you get to go first. How
All
can
right.
listeners learn more about you?
Great. Well, I have a website. It's thrivemultifamily.com, THRIV multifamily.com, or you can also email me, Nic@thrivemultifamily.com. And on the website, there's a Calendly link. So I'd love to set up a call to, I got 15-minute calls on there that if you have any questions about what it is that I do, how I was able to work through the process, we can dig in deeper and at least start that process. So please set up a call and love to chat with you.
Awesome. And Will, same thing for you. How can listeners learn more about you?
Yeah. Shoot me an email, will@humbleoakcapital.com, or find me on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn all the time. Would love to chat, connect that way. If you're in the DFW area, send me an email. Would love to meet up and, grab lunch, coffee, whatever. Just looking for people, like I said, that are desire to make an impact in communities in a real way and partner with others in that same journey. So there we are.
Awesome. Well, hey, thanks very much again, and appreciate you guys coming on the show today.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks so much, Brian. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Will.
Hey, if you like that episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But more importantly, if you haven't joined our multifamily educational community, the Tribe of Titans yet, you are missing out. So get yourself 30 days free by clicking the link below in the description, or go to thetribeoftitans.info, and we'll see you there.